So for our group project, we decided to do a policy review on DEI in higher education. It's going to be with Kat Cox, Sarah Lancaster, Kelly Leslie, and Trey Miles. And so just before we get into it, I just want to give like an overview of what diversity, equity, and inclusion or DEI means. So diversity is about valuing the unique differences each person brings, such as race, age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or ability. Equity ensures fairness by providing everyone with the support and opportunities they need to succeed. Inclusion creates a culture of respect and belonging where all voices are heard and people feel encouraged to share their perspectives. And together, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, builds an environment where everyone can contribute and thrive. So give you an overview of what's happening right now with our policy. The Trump administration has made many changes to the operations of higher education when it comes to DEI. Of the changes, he has made it illegal to consider race, ethnicity, and gender identity in admissions or programming at higher education institutions. These policies place colleges and universities that receive federal funding under increased scrutiny, and as a result, institutions are shifting toward merit-based approaches and race-neutral criteria in admissions, hiring, and scholarships, which could significantly affect diversity and support for underrepresented students. But to even understand any of that, you have to understand where it started from. So while DEI has evolved over the decades, its beginnings traces back to the civil rights and the women's rights movement of the 1960s and 70s. Early efforts in higher education focused on increasing representation of underrepresented students. Through landmark Supreme Court cases like Brown v. Board of Education, the federal government took action on their duty to promote a place where everyone afforded the same opportunity to learn. By the 2010s, institutions formalized this concept by establishing DEI offices, hiring chief diversity officers, and including DEI in their strategic plans. Today, DEI remains a central but contested part of higher education. Many states have passed or proposed laws that restrict DEI offices and race-conscious programs, and recent court decisions have limited race-based admissions. Institutions are also under increasing financial pressure and are expected to demonstrate measurable results from DEI investments. As a result, there's a stronger emphasis on campus climate, belonging, mental health, and inclusive teaching practices, along with a growing expectation for data-driven accountability. But looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, DEI in higher education is likely to become more data-focused, integrated, and legally conscious. Because of legal limits on race-based policies, many institutions may emphasize socioeconomic, first generation, or rural status as a way to promote diversity. Even the language around DEI may also evolve, as some institutions are already reframing their work around terms like belonging, inclusive excellence, or equity of outcomes. But despite political and financial pressures, most experts agree that equity and inclusion will remain essential to the mission of higher education. The key to the future DEI would be integrating it into core institution goals, demonstrating real impact through data, and sustaining authentic inclusion for all students.
To remain legally compliant and still serve students effectively, universities can implement a new comprehensive framework. This begins with a legal compliance review to align policies with current federal and state regulations, followed by efforts to reframe around student success metrics, shifting the focus from demographic outcomes to measurable gains. Policymakers should set equity practices across core functions into all campus resources. Using race-neutral criteria ensures compliance while maintaining a commitment to opportunity and fairness. Transparency and accountability practices help maintain trust and demonstrate integrity. Finally, sustained investment in student belonging and access, paired with engaging stakeholders and building culture, ensures this policy reform translates into meaningful campus-wide impact. Implementing these policy options begins with auditing current hiring, admissions, and training policies to identify gaps and ensure fair access. Reframing begins with converting key performance metrics to include retention, graduation, and belonging measures while conducting a barriers analysis to spot policies that disadvantage certain students. Embedding equity across core functions includes admissions, financial aid, curriculum, advising, student affairs, and career services, with intentional use of race-neutral benchmarks such as socioeconomic background, first-generation status, disability, or geographic disadvantages. Transparent reporting through public dashboards or annual equity reports enhances accountability, while listening sessions and workshops engage faculty, staff, students, alumni, and community partners. Continuous training in cultural competency, accessibility, and bias awareness, alongside planned events to communicate policy shifts, helps sustain culture change and enforces a unified commitment to belonging and student success. By aligning practices with federal and state guidelines, the approach protects funding and safeguards the university's ability to sustain key programs, focusing on student outcomes and keeps equity efforts goal-oriented. The framework ensures support reaches students broadly, extending opportunities to all who face barriers to access and success. Using law-compliant, race-neutral strategies maintains a firm commitment to access and equity without legal risk. At the same time, embedding these reforms across all divisions integrates a culture of inclusion into daily operations. Finally, by linking initiatives through shared accountability and collaboration, the model ensures continuity of student services, fostering a campus environment where every student can thrive.
Policy recommendations. With the ever-changing politics and policies of DEI, it is difficult to make recommendations for policies going forward. However, 3 things stood out that could help strengthen policies in the future. First is leadership. Leaders at all levels of higher education institutions must prepare for and expect pushback on DEI programs. It is important that leaders work together and show a united front when faced with these challenges. Second, DEI policies will need to prove their effectiveness with data-driven evidence. Fagan said in their journal article, policymakers at all levels must leverage data-driven insights to enact long-term enforceable policies that go beyond performative commitments and result in tangible, measurable progress towards equity and inclusion in U.S. universities. The last recommendation is to recognize that individuals are not one-dimensional. DEI programs can help everyone at some point. Richard Reddick, Senior Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education at the University of Texas, Austin, said in part, organizations that address veterans issues for women, and that address issues for rural students, a lot of populations that people do not think of as DEI spaces. Nevertheless, most DEI organizations serve these populations.
For my portion of the project, I found 3 organizations that were relevant to the DEI policy issues outside of the race and gender perception that follows the acronym. National organizations that stand apart from universities and institutions are recognized as crucial parts of national framework for collaborative development and systemic changes within higher education. They get to represent groups and populations through a collective voice with the mission of advocacy and education-related progress. The first organization I chose was EAB, previously named the Education Advisory Board. They are both a company and an organization that has a mission of prioritizing insight-driven solutions, access, and equity in higher education. This specific organization has been tediously tracking the impacts of various Trump declarations since January of 2025 across 50 colleges with regard to DEI dismantling. While addressing these orders and their immediate implications, EAB also gives guided suggestions to institutions with relation to each administration declaration or policy. The second organization I chose was the American Association of University Professors. This is an organization with a mission to protect quality higher education and promote the idea that higher education can be accessible and affordable for all who choose to pursue it. The AAUP website has a multitude of resources ready to specifically negate the harsh and harmful decrees the federal government has put into place and has even actively opposed some of these orders, outlining their own policy statements, reports, and analysis, Trump-specific administration attacks on diversity, and various resources to preserve and advance diversity. The third organization I chose is the Association on Higher Education and Disability. They are a membership-based organization with a simple mission. Disability, Equity, and Higher Education. Their website is full of extensive resources of recorded webinars and presentations, trainings, document guides, publications, and relevant communities that are all focused on inclusive measures for higher education students, staff, instructors, and working professionals.
In conclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion create environments where everyone could thrive. Since the mid-1900s, society has been working hard towards these goals. It is only recently that an erosion of these environments have begun. Groups such as the American Association of University Professors and the Education Advisory Board have a plethora of information on how DEI is being dismantled in higher education. Institutions of higher education can strengthen current and future policies by strengthening leadership and holding them accountable to these policies that they create. By using measurable data related to DEI, these leaders can be transparent with the success of these policies.